Well, 3 years ago, we saw Christian McCaffrey post this on social media. 49ers had traded with the Carolina Panthers for Christian. He thanked Carolina for their time to begin his career, and now we sit here with the 49ers getting ready to play the Panthers in a high-stakes Monday Night Football game. Two winning teams, surprising from the Carolina perspective, I'm sure for many. They're 6-5 following an overtime victory over the Atlanta Falcons against the 7-4 49ers, who are fairly heavily favored in this game. I personally think they're going to win by more than a possession. I know that I'm spoiling my prediction a little bit early. Mike thinks the game's going to be a little bit closer, but it's still going to be a fun reunion in primetime for Christian McCaffrey against Carolina. And I want to talk about Christian and the stakes of this game because there's big-time NFC playoff probability on the line. Christian is on pace to go 1,000. We just need to bring more light to that right now. He's on pace to become the first player in NFL history with 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards in a single season twice. He did it in a Carolina uniform back in 2019, and I was watching tape from that game. That was the last time that the Panthers had been at Levi's Stadium. It was an October day in 2019. It was during that seismic run for the 49ers to the NFC Championship and the Super Bowl. They're wearing their 94 all-white throwback jerseys at home against Kyle Allen, the quarterback of the Panthers, and Christian McCaffrey, the running back of Carolina. And the 49ers dropped 51 points on the Panthers. It was Emmanuel Sanders' first game with the 49ers following the trade deadline, which makes me wonder if it was November, actually. Maybe they traded for Sanders a little bit ahead of the deadline. Can't remember the exact date, but I do remember 51 points. I remember an epic Nick Bosa interception of a little, very short pass right in front of him, a little screen, and he hopped up, picked it off, almost took it back to the house. Tevin Coleman scored many touchdowns in that game. Sanders had one. Deebo Samuel had one. He celebrated with Daniel Brunskill. That was the last time the Panthers had visited the Bay Area. Christian McCaffrey that year went for 1,000. It's only been done by the 49ers' Roger Craig, by Marshall Faulk of The Greatest Show on Turf Rams, and by Christian McCaffrey in that 2019 season. He currently is on pace to get to it again. He has been absolutely fantastic this year. No, he has not lost a step. Let's look at Christian McCaffrey and his insane separation ability just with some still shots that Mike got from the All-22 tape. This was the 3rd and 15 that essentially sealed the game in the 49ers' favor against the Arizona Cardinals. At the bottom of your screen, right by that NFL logo, so my cursor is right above it. I could even zoom in a little bit. That's Christian McCaffrey split out wide working against the defensive back. This is a deep comeback pattern because it's 3rd and 15. You could see how far away Brock Purdy is. He's standing over on the right all the way by on top of the Arizona Cardinals logo. 49ers pass protection holds up well enough. Purdy is throwing before Christian McCaffrey comes out of his break. Now watch frame 2. McCaffrey starting to come back toward the football. Football's already out at this point. Purdy is getting hit, so this had to be an anticipatory throw. You can see Purdy getting hit on the right. Now watch this. The football's going to be a few more yards down the field, maybe 5 or 6 yards further downfield. McCaffrey all of a sudden has almost 5 yards of separation. I mean, the difference between this frame and this frame, looking at the bottom of your screen, I'm going to go back and forth between those two. That's how quickly Christian McCaffrey opens up green grass. There has maybe never been a running back who can do this as effectively as McCaffrey, and I think it'd be very fitting if he went 1,000 again this season to become the first in NFL history to achieve that, because he is capable of doing things on the football field. As I just showed you, with this exhibition, he's capable of doing things on the football field that I don't think we've ever seen a running back do before. Brock Purdy was marveling about this. And if he doesn't trust Christian to get this kind of separation against the defensive back, then Brock can't throw that football. Like, look where at Brock on the right side of this frame right now. He is getting hit. He is taking contact. The ball is out. because it has to be out, and it's really just trust in his receiver, in Christian McCaffrey, to be open, to generate that separation while the ball is in the air. This is why it's so hard to convert anything that's above 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7. 3rd and 15 has a very low conversion rate because it's hard for pass protection to hold up for that long. And Purdy putting that blind trust into Christian McCaffrey pays off when McCaffrey generates 5 yards of separation. If he doesn't generate that separation, this is a pick six, point blank. That's how good Christian is. Mike says that Mac probably would have thrown to Juwan Jennings on this play because Brock Purdy takes some more chances. Look where Jennings is at. He's open, but that's not going to be a first down. 2 defenders would converge on him. Ordinary quarterback, ordinary running back, that ball does go underneath to Juwan Jennings. MVP candidate quarterback, MVP candidate running back, Christian McCaffrey. They both were in the top 5 MVP finalists, I guess I should say. That ball goes 15 yards downfield, more than 15 yards through the air, and it gets the 49ers a huge first down that essentially ended that game. All right, so let's talk about this matchup against the Panthers, and let's talk about what's going to happen over the course of the next couple of days. The 49ers are trying out a bunch of kickers today. I will report the full list of tryouts once they are complete. The 49ers might sign one of the kickers today, or they might sign one of the kickers tomorrow, but they don't take the practice field until Thursday because they don't play till Monday. So instead of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it is Thursday, Friday, Saturday out on the practice field for the 49ers. Monday night game against the Panthers. 49ers currently have a high playoff probability, over 75% for San Francisco. You win this one, as you're supposed to win this one. You're favored by a touchdown. You are 8-4 with a trip to Cleveland coming up after. That's right after Thanksgiving. The game against Cleveland is going to be interesting because they actually have a plus unit of the football, unlike Arizona or the Carolina Panthers. The 49ers beat a very mediocre at best Cardinals team on Sunday. Nobody's pretending that the Cardinals are better than that. Carolina, we shouldn't pretend that they're any better than this either. I mean, they're in the same tier as the Arizona Cardinals. It's a below average offense, below average defense. The thing that Carolina does the best is run the football with Rico Dowdle. They've been able to generate above average efficiency in the run game, but Bryce Young, despite the fact that he threw for 440 the other day against the Atlanta Falcons, he has not been consistently impressive. In fact, the Panthers have been anything but consistent over the course of this season. They did beat the Green Bay Packers, but with every passing week, that looks less remarkable. Green Bay has really been an unsteady team, an unsteady winning team this year, but we do have to tip our caps to the Panthers for winning that game in Green Bay, but they do not score above average in either phase of the football game. That's why they find themselves right here. The 49ers, I think, have designs to be over here, especially with the offense now under Brock Purdy. So we can say that the 49ers offense, or the 49ers as a team, might be 2, even 3 tiers ahead of the Carolina Panthers on paper. The following week, and I know that a lot of people don't like to look too far ahead, but the following week, you've got the Cleveland Browns, who are a tier lower than the Panthers, but present a greater danger because their defense moves them further up this team tier chart. That's a very, very good Cleveland defense. The 49ers learned that the hard way in 2023. They may be terrible offensively. They rank the worst in the league offensively, but with Myles Garrett able to destroy a game at any moment, with potentially inclement weather in Cleveland hitting to bring that game into the deep waters of the fourth quarter, still close, that's not going to be easy for the 49ers, right? So they're going to be favored against the Browns, but it's going to be something that presents a much different challenge than Carolina coming up this week. I think when you look at the Panthers, they have evolved as a team. The pass protection has gotten better after an 0-2 start. They've returned some guys up front. I think that they figured out how to use Tetairoa McMillan, the first-round pick out of Arizona. They lined him up in the slot primarily in their most recent game against the Atlanta Falcons. And this is his route tree. He loves running these intermediate routes. You can see with the green, this is route percentage for Tetairoa McMillan. So he's going to run those outs. He's going to run those digs, the comebacks, and the curls with his 6'4" frame, if it's coming out of the slot, I worry about Upton Stout. And I wonder if the 49ers are going to try to bring a matchup safety down against Tedero McMillan to double him. Somebody like Jason Pinnock and the big nickel package might be a potential solution for San Francisco. Robert Saleh is going to have to get creative again and deal with the fact that the 49ers do not have a lot of defensive firepower to work with. It was 8 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns last week for Tedero McMillan against the Falcons. So this was his most productive game. The 49 Panthers at a time of the season where they're starting to feel themselves a little bit. They're at 6-5. The efficiency may not be great. The consistency hasn't yet been there for the Panthers, but they seem to be settling into who they are as a team, even if it's not great, and how they can pose the most danger to opponents. And I think Tedero McMillan in the slot is the answer for Arizona as far as how can you challenge an opposing defense the most sternly. And the 49ers have a 5'8" nickel cornerback in Upton Stout, who is going to have a big-time height disadvantage against Tedero McMillan. Now, so much of what the 49ers defense did on the field against the Arizona Cardinals is really, really misunderstood. I mean, I've just been scanning social media, and there's just like a really, really base misunderstanding of the 49ers performance against the Arizona Cardinals. So I think we got to revisit this one more time. This right here, this is the efficiency per play. A lot of people are freaking out that the 49ers gave up 400, I think 52, who knows exactly how much it was through the air, but 452 passing yards. I know that Jacoby Brissett completed 47 passes, and that's an NFL record, but that's an NFL record that isn't relevant at all. If Brock Purdy underhand tossed the ball to Christian McCaffrey 2 yards away 48 times on Sunday, he could also have the NFL record for completions in the game. It doesn't matter how many completions you have if you are not efficient with those completions. And if you want to look here, EPA per drop back, look where Arizona was on EPA per drop back. The percentage is the percentile score. 49.4 percentile means they were worse than half of NFL performances in terms of passing efficiency per dropback. Only 0.07 expected points added every single time that Jacoby Brissett threw the football. The 49ers, meanwhile, they were very, very good per dropback. 0.30. It's nearly 80th percentile for the 49ers. So Brock Purdy was efficient. Jacoby Brissett against the 49ers defense was not. And we got so many people, I think it's a fantasy football fixation, that are looking at yards, looking at raw completions, and saying, oh, well, this was a terrible 49ers defensive performance because they gave up so many completions and yards. And again, it doesn't matter if the vast majority of those completions are 3 or 4 yard plays that the defense funnels in front of them and stops for an inconsequential gain. The 49ers defense is severely shorthanded right now. One of the tricks that Robert Saleh is digging into is a heavy reliance on bend but don't break. So he's telling the 49ers pass rush, cage the quarterback. Don't be selfish. He doesn't want hero ball from the front four. He wants those guys to rush in a disciplined fashion to keep the quarterback in the pocket and have that pocket converge on the QB. So there may not be a highlight pressure, but if that pocket powers and converges on the quarterback, he's got to get rid of the ball. And then this back seven, without blitzing, they didn't blitz a whole lot against Arizona, plays top-down defense and keeps things generally in front of them. Whether or not the 49ers are successful with that formula is measured by how efficient the Arizona offensive score or any opponent's offensive score is. And for that, I go back to this. They were very, very inefficient. 0.07 per drop back for Arizona. That's mediocre. That's not efficient for the Cardinals. So I know that this takes a little bit more of a mathy approach, and we've got to look at it with a little bit more nuance. But I'm just so sick and tired of this vanilla analysis that just looks at raw yardage, even though clearly in this case, it had nothing to do with the Cardinals' success. It was 35-10 before garbage time in this game. The 49ers defense is not going to snuff other teams out. It's not going to be 2019 prime 49ers defense where no yards can be gained against them for the entire first half because they've got all pros across the entire defensive line and Fred Warner in the middle of that linebacking core, supported by young Dre Greenlaw and Richard Sherman on the back end with Jimmy Ward at one of the safety positions. I'm sorry, that's just not who the 49ers are. They're down way too many players. They've got a lot of youngsters. They got to figure out other ways to beat you, and you do that with resourcefulness. And one of the main keys for the 49ers, and this is the biggest matchup of the game against the Panthers, is you have to stop the run. Because if you don't stop the run, then you can't funnel the pass game into inefficiency. The biggest problem with the 2024 49ers is that they were terrible in run defense. They were number 29. So you just completely lose control over the game if the other team can run you out of the building. See the 2019 season's NFC Championship game. See 49ers Panthers in 2019. Well, the 49ers this year have vastly improved their run defense. They went to the draft focusing on doing that. Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, CJ West, all of those guys were drafted with run defense in mind first because the 49ers figured we need to do this. We need to fix this part of the foundation before we do anything else. The foundation of the house, when you're building the structure, is the run defense. That's the initial concrete pour. If you don't have that taken care of, it's going to sink just like the Millennium Tower in downtown San Francisco. You have to drill into bedrock. And the 49ers successfully did that over the course of this offseason. Look how good they were against the run. This is Arizona's EPA per rush. They hit 15.6 percentile. The 49ers put up an 85th percentile run defense effort against the Cardinals. Now, I know that things are eroding defensively for the 49ers because of all these injuries. Somebody asked me today on Twitter, well, what if this one last thing that they do extremely well, run defense, falls apart? And I told them, well, that's the Rams game. It fell apart against the Rams. They didn't have Michael Williams. They didn't have Alfred Collins, and the Rams did whatever the hell they wanted against the 49ers. No matter what, San Francisco has to scrap and claw their way into good run defense this year. Even if everything else flies out the window, if you have decent run defense, you at least force opponents to pass, and you set yourself up for some of those opportunistic takeaways. And the 49ers had 2 interceptions against Arizona, and they also had Upton Stout. They now have 2 separate rookies who have forced fumbles right on the goal line in critical moments. I know that it wasn't as big on Sunday because the 49ers were up by a lot, but Upton Stout ripped the ball away from Elijah Higgins, and then we had the big Alfred Collins play. That was really, really fun to watch back in week 5 for the 49ers against the Rams. Alfred Collins ripping the ball, punching the ball out from Kyron Williams. So that kind of opportunism, though, can only happen if you maintain control, some semblance of control of the game. If you're getting run out of the building, you're not going to be in position to hawk on the football. And it's really, really cool to see how the 49ers have built a lot out of a little on the defensive side of the ball this year by focusing on specific points of efficiency. And one of them is run defense. The entire draft was tied to that. And when we talk about this week, Rico Dowdle and the Panthers, they've been able to run the ball. This is the number 12 running back, or this is the number 12 rushing attack in football this year by EPA. Bryce Young ranks like number 23 or number 24 in QBR. Tetero McMillan might have had a big game against the Panthers, but it hasn't been a consistent pass game. The one thing that the Panthers have done on an above average level is run the ball. And that just so happens to test the 49ers at their strongest defensive spot, which is stopping the run. So I think this is, strength on strength. The question isn't, can the 49ers stonewall Carolina? The Panthers are going to rack up yards. It wouldn't shock me if they put up 400 yards on the 49ers. I mean, the Cardinals put up 480, but will the yardage matter? That's the question. Will the Panthers score 7 instead of 3 points? Will the Panthers avoid giveaways? And then on the other side, can Carolina's defense, which is ranked in the 20s as well, can they get the 49ers offense off the field? I'm really, really skeptical of that because it seems that the 49ers are playing at an elite level on that side of the ball now that Brock Purdy and Ricky Pearsall are back. And you know what? Ricky Pearsall is not going to go with another one-catch performance. How do I know that? Well, I saw the return of George Kittle for the 49ers back when he came off of injured reserve. And I noticed that he wasn't the first read on any plays in his first game back against the Atlanta Falcons. He was a decoy in the pass game, and he was a big-time contributor in the run-blocking game, but he wasn't a big-time contributor in the box score for the 49ers when it came to catching the football. Well, very, very similar story for Ricky Pearsall in this first game. We've got a breakdown here of Ricky Pearsall's. I think I have a breakdown here of Ricky Pearsall's target share. I thought I tweeted this, Mike. Did you see me tweet this? Maybe I forgot to hit the send button. I thought this was in the middle of the night. Maybe, Twitter was down at the time. So I woke up at 4 a.m. because I'm a bit of a psycho when it comes to some of my 49ers analysis. Sometimes I'll wake up at 3:30 or 4, and I'll just start watching tape, and I'll just start looking at some numbers because I want to get ready for these shows for you guys. That's why you should hit subscribe. My wife doesn't get it. She's like, why are you getting up? I'm like, because I got to go watch some tape. And so I was up at 4, and I saw first, second, third read target share breakdowns, and Ricky Pearsall was not the first read a single time for San Francisco on Sunday. So he obviously was spoon-fed back into the 49ers offense in a way that mirrored how George Kittle was spoon-fed back into the 49ers offense against the Falcons. That's not going to continue for 2 straight weeks. They didn't want Ricky to be taking a bunch of hits in his first game back. They wanted him to reacclimate. He was better off as more of a decoy for the 49ers. And Mike has now sent me the link. So good. I'm not crazy. I thought that I had retweeted this, Mike. This is crazy. Maybe I did, and maybe I didn't see it. But here we go. Now we can actually get it up on the screen. This is from Datorama. Cool little account. Take a look at this. Ricky Pearsall had a fairly high route share in his first game back, 77.8%, same as Juwan Jennings. But Ricky Pearsall had a much smaller target share than both Jennings and George Kittle. And look at the first read target share. Kittle, 31% of the time. Jennings, 31% of the time. Pearsall, 0% of the time. Pearsall just won the first read for the 49ers in the game on Sunday. I can guarantee you that will not continue to be the case moving forward. That's why this 49ers offense can get even better moving forward. One more time with the team tiers. The 49ers offense is x-axis. So any horizontal movement, you want to be further to the right and further up. Any horizontal movement is up to the offense. The 49ers offense already showed that they can follow any of these 3 colored arrows based on their renewed explosiveness against the Cardinals. Now, which colored arrow they take is dependent on the defense because the defense determines where you are on the vertical, on the y-axis. But I think the offense can definitely surge for the 49ers based on what we saw from Brock Purdy and company. How far it surges will depend on some other variables. But one reason I think there's still meat on the bone for the 49ers entering this game against the Panthers is that Ricky Pearsall had 0% of the first read target share, meaning they are still spoon-feeding Ricky Pearsall into the offense. Once Pearsall is back at 100% efficiency, then you're going to have a fully reintegrated George Kittle. You're going to have a fully reintegrated Juwan Jennings. It took a little while with the broken ribs. You're going to have a fully reintegrated Ricky Pearsall. You're going to have Christian McCaffrey doing stuff like this, separating in a way that only receivers are supposed to be able to separate, but Christian McCaffrey will be doing it as a running back. You'll have Demarcus Robinson and Kendrick Bourne in the reserve, essentially, if you're the 49ers. You'll have Jake Tonjes, somebody who's making huge catches at the start of the year, in the reserve for the 49ers. You'll have Brian Robinson. I mean, they've got so many weapons on this offense, and that's before we get to the potential Brandon Ayuk return, which obviously nobody seems sure about, but the 49ers are considering a week-to-week thing, at least as far as practice window is concerned. They don't need Brandon Ayuk to be an elite offense. I mean, I think that should have already been demonstrated based on what they did to Seattle back when everybody was healthy. It was only one drive, but they went 95 yards, and then obviously they got the job done even with George Kittle late in that game. But it should be very evident based on what they did against Seattle. It should be very evident based on what they did against Arizona with Purdy back. And, I'm going to show Mac Jones some love too. What the 49ers did against the Rams was also eye-opening. You saw how the Rams completely shut down the Seahawks and Sam Darnold. I mean, 4 interceptions? Seattle really had trouble in that game maintaining offensive efficiency, despite the fact that they've got some weapons on that offense. Sam Darnold ended that game as the number 1 QB in the NFL efficiency-wise. The 49ers scored 4 touchdowns against the Rams. Seattle did not come close to scoring 4 touchdowns against the Rams. And San Francisco had a backup quarterback in Mac Jones, and they didn't have Ricky Pearsall even as a decoy in that game. So the beginnings of this true 49ers offensive explosiveness and the pathway to elite status were already there the week prior against the Rams. They just didn't have Purdy yet, and they didn't have Pearsall yet. Now they've reintroduced a clearly superior quarterback, and obviously Pearsall is one of their best receivers. That's why the sky is the limit for this 49ers offense. And then I've talked about it so much, but defensively, people need to start being a little smarter in their evaluations. People need to stop saying, oh, well, they only had 13 pressures and 0 sacks. It's like, watch some tape and also calibrate your expectations with reality. This defense was completely gutted by the loss of Nick Bosa, by the loss of Fred Warner, by the loss of Mykel Williams. This defense entered the year as a young unit to begin with, and now doesn't have those foundational pillars. This defense is going to have to be resourceful. They're going to give up yards, but it's about winning at those critical moments. It's about being efficient rather than being dominant, because you can't be dominant if you don't have a lot of dominant players. So if you look at this defense and you analyze it with just a modicum of intelligence, if you recognize that efficiency per snap is way more important than counting fantasy football stats, then you'll actually see that the 49ers have a workable formula if the offense can indeed deliver elite football. The game against Arizona was a really, really good start for the 49ers. In fact, if you looked at the performance against the Arizona Cardinals and you extrapolated it over the course of the full season in terms of expected points per play versus other NFL teams, how would the 49ers rank? Number 1 offense, number 15 defense. They were slightly above average defensively against the Cardinals, and the number 1 special teams, which is where they rank as a special teams unit. They're at the top of the league. That's for the whole season, because thanks to Eddie Pinheiro, who unfortunately is now hurt, that they turned it around. But now they've got Sky Moore, Brian Robinson as prolific returners. But this number 1 on offense, number 15 on defense, number 1 on special teams, if the 49ers can continue this and port this against better competition, that is a formula that can take them a really long way. Period. People need to realize that this is not a league featuring dominant teams this year. I mean, the best team in the league right now, if we're only looking at offense and defense, and I think that we need to look at special teams as well, but charts like this can only look at offense and defense. The best team in the league is right here, the Rams. You want to be further to the right and further up. And guess what? The 49ers have already beaten the Rams with their JV team at SoFi Stadium. If the playoffs started today, the 49ers would head back to SoFi. So if the playoffs started today, the 49ers would have a playoff home game. at the spot where they've already won this year, and they would have a lot more firepower. I'm not saying that the 49ers would likely win. I'm saying that they could possibly win, and that I think a lot of people would watch that game. I think a lot of you would be interested. If you'd be interested in watching the 49ers and the Rams in the playoffs with Brock Purdy, you give a thumbs up in the chat section right now. The Cowboys, a couple years ago with a number 2 seed, I think it was 2023, the Packers were the number 7. The Packers didn't turn it on offensively until the back half of that season, which is why they snuck in as the 7. And the Packers went in and blew out the Cowboys in the wild card round of the playoffs on the road. Then the Packers gave the 49ers all they could handle in the divisional round. Then San Francisco had a super team that year. They outlasted the Packers. Then they came back against the Lions. They went to the Super Bowl that season. But it just goes to show you, and I think Brock Purdy is clearly a better quarterback than Jordan Love. I mean, every single data point has reinforced that. Love has actually looked really, really inconsistent again here over the course of the last few weeks. They lost to the Panthers at home, but my prediction is that it will not take Purdy long to pass Jordan Love in the efficiency metrics this year. Once Purdy actually qualifies for the leaderboard with enough snaps, because he's been out with the toe injury, it's not going to take him long to, I think he's number 4 right now. He'll climb the ladder to 3 to 2, maybe even to 1, based on how healthy this 49ers offense stays around him. But the point is that if that Packers team in 2023 was able to destroy the number 2 seed and then scare the hell out of the number 1 seed, the 49ers in 2023, if the 49ers of 2021 with Jimmy Garoppolo, who had multiple injuries at the time and a defense ranked in the 20s, if they were able to make it all the way to the NFC Championship game where they led by 10 points in the fourth quarter, like if those teams can make noise, this 49ers team in 2025 can also make noise. Because we're looking at a 49ers team in this part of the team tier chart. Let me find 2021, the 2021 team tiers, just to show you guys where the 49ers were that year. And they weren't far from a Super Bowl appearance. They went to the NFC Championship game against the Rams that season. So I think that it might be a useful exercise if this website does work. This is Ben Baldwin's website. Yeah, I think it's working. I'm opening up team tiers, and I'm going to put these on the screen. And you guys can see exactly where the 49ers were in that 2021 season. And it should help you understand that yes, contention in this league is possible if you've got a very strong offense. And it was Garoppolo, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk in that 2021 season that put the 49ers in a really good spot. All right, here they were. Oops. It disappeared on me. All right, I'm getting this right now. So keep what you see on the screen right now in your mind. Look at the end of the arrows. That's where I think the 49ers can be at some point. Now we're shifting to 2021. This is where the 49ers were in 2021. They were in the second tier. They had a slightly above average defense, but it tumbled to below average by the end, but when all those guys were hurt against the Rams in the playoffs. But just right on the average line. And the offense was, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's probably number 5 or number 6 in the league. Maybe number 6 or number 7. There were a few teams ahead of them offensively, but basically it put the 49ers in the second tier of the league in 2021. Not a great defense. Here this year, the 49ers, and obviously they haven't had Purdy yet, so it's hard to say exactly where they'll be. But the way I outline it is if the defense stabilizes, they can follow the path of the blue, and they can end up right near the Colts in this second tier. If they follow the path of the orange, if they get better defensively, which, I'm not going to count Robert Saleh and his guys out, but if they get better defensively, they could be near where the Bills are. Either way, unless the defense continues cratering, either way, the 49ers can end up where they were in 2021, which is right here, the second tier, diagonal tier, right? First tier in 2021, you had the Cowboys, the Bills, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Second tier in 2021, you had the Packers, the Chiefs, 49ers, the Bengals, the Rams, the Cardinals, who got killed by the Rams in the playoffs that year, and the New England Patriots. Now, remember that season, the 49ers beat the Packers, who are a borderline tier 1 team in the postseason on the road at Lambeau Field. They beat the Cowboys, who were a tier 1 team, and then they lost to technically the worst of those 3 teams in an NFC championship game. They would have faced the Bengals, who were worse on paper than the 49ers, in the Super Bowl. The Rams ended up beating the Bengals. So it was 2 tier 2 teams in the Super Bowl. Wasn't one of these guys out here in the Super Bowl. It just goes to illustrate that once the playoffs come around, as long as you're in the tournament, and as long to get into the tournament, you got to be probably in the top 2 tiers. But once you're in, it's a crapshoot, especially if you've got one of the best quarterbacks, as I think the 49ers very, very clearly do with somebody like Brock Purdy. So massive, massive implications on Monday night, because I think if the 49ers move to 8-4, they are well on their way to securing a spot in that tournament. You've obviously got to avoid the scourge of injuries moving forward. I don't have much more expertise on how to do that if you're the 49ers. I think a lot of it has been dumb luck for San Francisco up until this point, but maybe they've turned a corner in that way, and you could always knock on wood for that. All right, I'm ready to answer some questions. Maybe Mike has something good for me to talk about. Yeah, Mike has been texting me. John Parker Romo and Anders Carlson are amongst the kickers working out for the 49ers today. Pinheiro obviously dealing with his grade 1 hamstring strain. Carlson filled in last year for Jake Moody and did a decent job for the 49ers. Also, Yetur Gross-Matos might be able to come back at some point. I think he's out for at least one more week, or no, he was out for the Giants game. The Giants game was followed by the Rams game. Yeah, one more week. They've played 3 games already without Yetur Gross-Matos. So he's going to be out for at least this one, and then maybe they give him an extra IR stay for the Browns game so he can take that bye week and then be back against the Tennessee Titans. That could be a big boost for the 49ers defensive line. You know, one thing that nobody's talking about also is that the 49ers offensive line has been damn good ever since they've stabilized the left guard position. And, you know, I have to go, I told you so again here, to all the folks on Twitter who are so nice to me all the time. I said that as soon as they get left guard stabilized, a lot of this offensive line trouble is going to be solved. They have gotten both Burford and Barch, 2 veterans, back. They're splitting time at left guard, 30 snaps each. Look what's happened. 49ers have stabilized the offensive line. That was the 4th lowest pressure rate that Brock Purdy has faced in his entire NFL career. I wrote about this in the 49ers grades up on the San Francisco Standard. You can go ahead and check that out. It is up on the screen. Mike, do we have an ad read today? Let me know if we have an ad read today. I forgot if we had an ad read today. I better get to that at some point if we do. Mike is checking, I think. He said, good question. He's looking. I'm going to go to the comment section and answer some questions. Do I think it's more likely they'll activate Cleveland Farrell this week? Yes, because Robert Beal Jr. is in concussion protocol. Curtis Robinson is going to have the green dot. That is correct, because Tatum Bethune is out with the high ankle sprain. Isaac says the Panthers pass rush would have a hard time against the Kleenex. Are you a Panthers fan, Isaac? Yeah, it's not a good pass rush. That they have like the number 31 win rate in all of football. It's not very good. David, can you upgrade the team tiers graph to show the progress of the 49ers through the year to map the movement compared? Well, yes, I'm going to update it every week here. Let's get it back up on the screen for you guys. I'm going to update this every week for you, but Purdy just came back right now, so it's hard to update. I would say, you know, the 49ers were about right here, like right here. Do you see my cursor? And they just moved up slightly this way. But if they continue doing what they did, and what we're also going to have to do is, like, the sample of Brock Purdy is going to be relatively small compared to the rest of the season. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to take splits for the 49ers, right? After this 4-game stretch, we can see exactly where they've been over this 4-game stretch, and they may be way over here as an offense. They may be over on the right, which would be a great sign for the 49ers. But this is also, the PFF one is weighting recent performance a little bit more heavily, which should help us with our analysis. But it's still, I think, the 49ers are going to be an exceptional case this year just because of the circumstances that they're dealing with. More questions. Can the 49ers enter the playoffs with the 4th or 5th seed? Of course. Very possible. Just going to depend on how many games they win over the course of the rest of the season. Right now, if the playoffs started today, the 49ers would be number 7. They kicked the Lions out. Yeah, they kicked the Lions out because the Lions lost to the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the 49ers haven't had a bye yet, so they've played more games than these other teams. So, stuff hasn't equally lined up yet, but they've got a better record than the Detroit Lions right now. So the playoffs wouldn't start today, but if they did, then that's where things would be. All right, this 49ers show is brought to you by Bubs Naturals. They partnered us before, and we're happy that they're partnering with us again. Bubs Naturals is a tribute to former Navy SEAL Glenn Bub Doherty, a national hero who laid down his life saving Americans in Benghazi, Libya. Glenn was a friend to so many, including the founder of Bubs, Sean Lake. Glenn's call sign in the Navy was Bub. So Glenn Bub Doherty stood for self-improvement and was always helping others. That DNA is woven into Bubs' brand. Bubs, it's collagen powder, donates 10% of profits to charity in Glenn's honor, starting with the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. Bubs Natural doesn't just make the cleanest and most effective collagen peptides in the world. They also sell electrolyte supplements, MCT oil creamer, and more. All their products have clean ingredients and are third-party tested. Live better longer for a limited time only. Our listeners are getting 20% off at Bubs Naturals by using the code Lombardi at checkout. Just head to bubsnaturals.com and use Lombardi and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Thank you. Antoine, thank you, man. I'm not a Purdy fan. I'm just a Purdy realist. Let's put it that way. The funny thing is that in this toxic world, in this toxic discourse, just by being objective and putting out facts, because I put out facts and not feelings, people think that you're being a fan. It's because they've forgotten what objective journalism is. But that's what this show is about. That's why I appreciate everybody. Hey, you guys, they're not paying me to say this, but Carlos and the guys, Fatty over at the Boys Deli, good spot on Polk. May have to check it out for lunch. We'll talk to everybody soon. It's been a fun show. I'll let you know about those kicker tryouts later today.